Sarah didn't look like someone who would leave the world on a Tuesday. She was the woman who waved at neighbors while bringing in their trash cans, the mom who remembered every teacher's birthday, the friend who answered texts at midnight with, "I'm praying right now." That afternoon, the sky had been sulking all day, low clouds, a fine rain, the kind that makes everything feel heavier. She stood at the stove, stirring soup, humming a worship song under her breath while her son Ethan finished homework at the table and the dryer knocked quietly down the hall. It was ordinary in the most beautiful way. Then the pain arrived like a thief. It started as a squeezing in the center of her chest, nothing dramatic, just a fist slowly closing. She pressed her palm there and tried to breathe through it. When it sharpened, she thought of stress and schedules and age, and then her breath clipped, narrow and high, and the ladle slipped from her fingers and clattered across the tile. Ethan looked up. "Mom?" She opened her mouth, but the room tilted, the lights stretched, the steam from the pot sketched the ceiling and vanished. She reached for the counter, missed, and hit the floor in a sound Ethan would remember for the rest of his life. He was on his knees beside her before the ladle stopped spinning. "Mom! Mom!" He shook her shoulder. Her eyes stared past him. The soup bubbled like nothing had happened. He called 911 with hands that wouldn't stop shaking and repeated the address twice because he couldn't hear his own voice over his heart. The operator told him to put the phone on speaker and to start compressions. His palms pressed down, too hard at first, then not hard enough, then right, guided by a voice he would never meet. He counted, he cried while he counted, he begged God while counting. And in that small kitchen, with rain tapping the window and dinner burning, a boy tried to borrow time for his mother. The paramedics arrived under a wash of red lights and calm urgency. They moved like a single thought, bag, pads, line, meds, rhythm. They shocked her once, twice. Charging, clear. Resume compressions. Ethan stood in the hall with his back sliding down the wall until he hit the floor, arms wrapped around his knees, whispering, "Please, please, please," to no one who could answer. After 17 minutes of work and a monitor that held a flat, stubborn line, the lead medic checked his watch, took a breath, and spoke the sentence that turns houses into sanctuaries of silence. They draped a thin sheet over Sarah's face. Someone turned off the stove. The soup went quiet, but Sarah was not in the kitchen anymore. The world she entered did not feel like leaving, but like waking. The first thing she noticed wasn't sight or sound. It was a weightlessness, and then a warmth. Not on skin, but within it, as if every cell had stepped into sunlight. There was no wind and also the sense of a breeze that moved without moving. She became aware of a horizon that was everywhere, near and far at once, and a light that didn't blind or burn, only welcomed. She looked down and saw that her hands were her hands, yet truer, like the idea of hands before bones and scars had their say. The ground beneath her felt soft, not grass, not sand, something alive that held her without holding. Voices rose in the distance, blending and lifting, a language her heart understood before her mind did. She moved toward the sound without taking a step. The closer she drew, the more she felt known. Known utterly, completely, mercifully, known all the way back to the first time she had said amen as a little girl and meant it. A figure approached, luminous without glare, familiar without introduction. She didn't need to ask who he was. When he looked at her, love wasn't a concept anymore. It was gravity. Everything in her leaned toward him. "Lord," she breathed, though breath wasn't necessary here. He didn't speak with lips, yet words filled her like water fills empty places. "Sarah," he said, and her name sounded like it had never been mispronounced by fear. "You are safe." Her knees gave in, but there was no falling. There was only surrender, and it felt like being restored. In an instant, she saw her life. Ordinary mornings, hurried prayers, the night she told a neighbor, "I'm not much, but I can show up." The quiet disappointment she never voiced, the birthday candles, the hospital waiting room where she had said goodbye to her father, the specific kindnesses no one else saw, the edges of impatience she hated in herself, all of it held in a gaze that did not accuse. He showed her where he had been, at the sink when she was convinced she was alone, in the passenger seat during a storm, in the back pew where she thought her prayer had bounced off the ceiling. He had been there. He had always been there. The music swelled. Shapes moved at the margins of glory. People dancing like laughter, others kneeling with faces lifted and eyes bright with a joy that cannot be counterfeited. She longed to stay. The word home finally meant something she could feel. But the one who loved her let the next truth enter her like morning. "It is not your time," he said. "Your work on earth is not finished." Her heart tightened with a grief more tender than pain. "My son," she said, and the ache in the single word held 1,000 hopes. "He needs you," Jesus answered, and she realized he had framed the sentence to include himself. "He needs you, and I will be with you." She didn't want to turn. She didn't want to leave the light that made questions irrelevant, but obedience in that place felt like love made visible. He touched her forehead, and the touch was both command and comfort. "Tell them I am real," he said, "and tell them I am closer than their breath. "Tell them I am coming." The kitchen rushed back like a room thrown open. Air slammed into lungs that had forgotten how to rise. The sheet moved with that first small breath. The medic who had called the time of death dropped the clipboard. The monitor chirped to life with a shy, miraculous rhythm. "We've got a pulse," someone said, as if announcing a sunrise. Ethan rounded the corner at a run and slid on the tile. He almost didn't lift the sheet, afraid, but then he did, and his mother's eyes were open, and he made a sound that was not quite a sob and not quite a laugh, the sound gratitude makes when it finally has a body. Later came the hospital, the flurry of tests, the baffled cardiologist who kept saying the word anoxic, and then shaking his head because none of the scans matched what should have happened to a brain that had gone without oxygen for so long. Nurses touched her arm longer than necessary, as if confirming warmth. A chaplain came by with pamphlets about grief and found himself crying instead, not because of loss, but because he couldn't stop thinking about gain. Sarah slept. When she woke, Ethan was there, holding her hand with both of his, eyes red-rimmed and shining. "I prayed," he said. "I did chest compressions, and I prayed." She smiled with a softness that came from somewhere beyond language. "He heard you," she whispered. "I heard him." She told the story slowly at first, starting with the part everyone could accept. The pain, the fall, the sirens, the ceiling lights rolling as they wheeled her, the word flatline floating like a ghost. She waited a day to tell the rest. When she did, she spoke like you speak of a person you love in a room of skeptics, careful, steady, unwilling to argue and equally unwilling to lie. She described the landscape that was not a landscape, the music that held no melody and all melodies, the way his name had fit her mouth as if it had been shaped for it. No one in the room interrupted. Even the machines seemed to breathe quieter to listen. News travelled in widening circles. A nurse told her sister, who told a small group at church, who told the woman in the third row who had stopped praying months ago and started again that night because if God could walk kitchens and wake mothers, maybe he could come for her son too. The lead medic returned on his day off, stood by the bed with his hat twisting in his hands, and admitted he had driven home without the radio on because silence felt like reverence. "I can list 12 reasons this shouldn't have happened," he said. "I can't list one reason it did." Sarah touched his arm. "I can," she said gently. "Grace." Going home felt like stepping onto a new planet tilted at the same angle. The laundry still needed doing. The soup pot had a black ring where the fire had licked it too long. The neighbours brought casseroles, Ethan slept with his door open, and Sarah began the work that had been put into her hands in a place without clocks. She told the story at the grocery line and at the DMV, to a tired barista and to a man fixing her internet who didn't make eye contact until she said, "Jesus," and then looked up with eyes that had needed that name. She didn't embellish, she didn't defend, she simply testified, "He is real, he is close, he is coming." Sundays changed. She sang louder, not because the notes were different, but because the one she sang to had touched her forehead. She found herself stopping mid-errand to pray for strangers. She kept a small journal in her purse with the names of people she'd met. "Woman in yellow coat," cried at register, "asked God to meet her in dreams." "Teen boy on bus, lost dad last year, peace over him." "Paramedic with grey eyes, let him know he is seen." When fear nipped, because fear never gives up quickly, she would breathe slow and say out loud what had been said to her. "It's not your time. Your work is not finished." Then she would add words of her own. "Use me." One evening, weeks after the miracle that wasn't supposed to happen, she and Ethan stood on the back porch and watched the sky make promises in orange and gold. He leaned into her side the way he had when he was little. "Sometimes I wake up and I think it didn't happen," he said. "Then I make you pancakes," she smiled, nudging him, "and you remember there are wonders and there are consequences." He laughed, then sobered, the way grief and joy live in the same house now. "What did he look like?" he asked, voice low. Sarah searched for words that wouldn't shrink glory. "Like love," she said finally. "Like love that can speak and mountains obey. Like love that knows your name better than you do." Before bed, she stood alone in the kitchen where the world had paused. She placed her hand on the tile where her body had fallen and thanked God for walls that can hold a resurrection. She turned off the lights and whispered into the soft hum of night, "I will tell them." Across town, a nurse told a patient who had given up that maybe tomorrow would be softer. In another house, a paramedic sat at his table and stared at his hands, remembering how a sheet had lifted and a life had returned, and wondered if prayer was not the foolishness he had dismissed, but a line that holds when other lines go flat. If you are reading this with a heart that has learned the weight of silence, hear the truth that walked back into a kitchen and rearranged the air. You are not alone. God is not an idea you visit on Sundays or a memory from childhood you try not to outgrow. He is a person who steps into rooms no one else can enter.
He is nearer than your next inhale. He is not late. He is not far. And he is still waking what the world has covered, still calling by name, still sending his people back with simple assignments that sound like thunder when they are obeyed. Tell them I am real. Tell them I am close. Tell them I am coming. Sarah keeps the soup pot with the scorched ring as a relic of the ordinary place where the extraordinary arrived. She carries a gas gift card in her purse for strangers stranded on the side of the road, because once a boy kept pressing his hands to a chest and God stretched 20 minutes into forever. Some nights she sits on the edge of her bed, fingers at her forehead where his touch had burned peace into bone, and prays for whoever will hear this story next. If that's you, know this: the laws of nature bow where love stands. Heaven is not only a destination, sometimes it is a door that opens into kitchens, hospitals, and tired hearts. And when it opens, the light that spills through it does not leave things as it found them. It sends people back. It sends them with joy. It sends them with a message. He is real. He is close. And he is coming.